Since Josh Giddey's game yesterday, a lot has been made about Josh Giddey and the Chicago Bulls, and a lot of people are asking the question is, do the Chicago Bulls have a Josh Giddey problem? We're going to talk about it a little bit today, and we're going to talk about it from a holistic standpoint. If you're expecting me to just rant on Josh Giddey, that's not what this episode is going to be. We're going to try to talk about things from an objective standpoint of view. We're getting into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all, man. And this episode has been on my mind. I've been seeing a lot of talk around Josh Giddey, of course, after the last 24 hours, him basically getting benched in the last game, about kind of reframing now the deal for Alex Caruso and Josh Giddey, a deal that people were already not in favor of when the deal went down. Now, at the time, I had said, let's learn to separate what we got back in Josh Giddey from also our feelings over not getting back any picks in the deal overall. But now with Josh Giddey being on this team through 13 games, I do think that it's fair what some Bulls fans are really trying to look at and see what Josh Giddey is bringing to this team. And let's look at it. You guys know I'm a numbers guy. We're going to look at some numbers. We're going to look at, some things that aren't numbers, of course. But we're going to start off with this. Josh Giddey was always going to face an upward battle with the way that he was viewed by Bulls fans, mainly because the Bulls gave up one of the beloved players that we've had in recent memories in Alex Caruso to acquire Josh Giddey. And while a lot of Bulls fans over the last 24 hours have said things like, we should have never traded Alex Caruso, I understand the thought process, but this team was moving on and wanted to go younger and finally wanted to strike on a player that had high value before waiting too long or them leaving for nothing. Now, something can be said about the AK and Eversley continued evaluation of talent and their evaluation of assets and their evaluation and planning, which has lacked the majority of the time that they've run this franchise. So that's definitely a big aspect of it, but it was already going to be an uphill battle for this Josh Giddey to trade to turn the tide in the minds of Chicago Bulls fans. Now, of Josh Giddey fans, it's different, right? Like, they're a fan of the player of Josh Giddey, so they're going to have a different view on it. Bulls fans are looking at it as you gave up a beloved Bull that, regardless of shooting, scoring, anything like that, he's somebody that we absolutely loved being here on this team, and because of that, like I said, it was always going to be an uphill battle. Now, what has Josh Giddey done since he's been here with the Chicago Bulls? He's shooting the career high as far as three-point shooting on volume and percentage so far. He's not that far off as far as his career high as far as assists. I think he's like a half assist behind what his career high is. And the numbers look okay. They're not great, right? But they're not numbers that you're looking at like he's tied for the second highest points per game total of his NBA career. Like I said, the highest three-point shooting percentage. He's on one of the lowest volumes of his career as well. And that where we get into the first kind of conversation piece that I want to have about this is Josh Giddey has typically been a high usage player. When you look at his previous seasons with the OKC Thunder, he never fell below. He was 88th, so right outside of 90th percentile as far as usage rate. He was 90th his rookie year, 90th his sophomore year, and 88th his third year in OKC when they started going a different direction. So far with the Chicago Bulls, he's in the 38th percentile of usage rate. Now, there's something to be said of high usage, low volume players, right? Like, there's just something that's always a conversation around basketball is that if you have to have a high usage rate, but your scoring output is low volume, how effective are you, right? This isn't just a Josh Giddey conversation. That's something that we have with players regardless, right? And so there's that aspect of it. And then when you look at points per shot attempt, this is where it gets interesting. Josh Giddey has always been in the bottom third of the league as far as points per shot attempt, meaning that per the amount of shot, it's a fairly simple topic, but per the amount of shots that he gets, he doesn't get a lot of points per those shots. Now, that's usually a stat that's kind of more indicative of big-time scorers that you want to see. Like, DeMar DeRozan is out of this world of points per shot attempts because of his ability to get to the free throw line and add extra points when he's shooting. So just a little comparison there. Not comparing Josh Giddey with DeMar, but I know DeMar is a player that a lot of Bulls fans are going to be really familiar with, right? And then when you look at the on-off for Josh Giddey so far, it's bad. And it's again, this isn't to blame it all on. We're just getting all the data out there, and we'll talk about it. So if I'm saying anything that's triggering anybody yet, just stick with me. We're gonna make it all the way through this. Right now, Josh Giddey is in the bottom third of the league as far as points per 100 possessions that his team puts up. It's negative 3.5. When you look at the overall differential for Josh Giddey so far, he's in the bottom 9 percentile, meaning that basically 91% of NBA players are putting up a better point differential than Josh Giddey at negative 14.1 so far, and that's by far the lowest on the team. You also look at the points per 100 possessions for opponents. Opponents are averaging 10.7 points more per 100 possessions when Josh Giddey's on the court. That puts him in the bottom 8th percentile. Effective field goal shooting percentage. Teams are shooting a more effective field goal shooting percentage of 7.1% when Josh Giddey's on the court. That puts him in the bottom 3rd percentile. That means that 97 players in the NBA are better than Josh Giddey as far as what those numbers dictate. Now, numbers aren't everything. You want to pair the number with the eye test. You want to do all that. I've said all this multiple times before. But then you get into the lineups, and this is where we're going to start getting into my personal view on it. You guys can tell me how you feel about it. When you look at Josh Giddey, the lineups that he plays the most in, so the most is obviously the starting lineup, right? That unit has played 273 possessions together. They have a negative 1.7 point differential. So it's right there at the cusp, meaning that a couple of hot games from our starters, it can easily be a positive point differential. The next highest highest lineup that he's in is Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, P. Will, Nikola Vucevic. That has a negative 44 point differential. That's terrible. Then you get into the first one that he has a positive point differential. That's played 57 possessions together. That's Josh Giddey, Ayo, Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, Nikola Vucevic. That lineup is actually a plus 2.7 and averages 117.5 points per 100 possessions. But that's it. When you look at the top 8 lineups that Josh Giddey is in, that is the only one with a positive point differential. The other ones, negative 22, negative 19, negative 21. That means that a couple of things. Now, some people, if you're already sliding towards blaming Josh Giddey, a lot of people are going to look at that and say, well, it's clear. It's just Josh Giddey. Again, a holistic approach and a fair approach. It's not necessarily just Josh Giddey, right? And if you're going to have the conversation on did Alex Caruso or Josh Giddey, as of right now, impact the team more favorably, obviously it's Alex Caruso. That's not even the question to be had there, right? It's Alex Caruso. But you also have to look at it as this. We knew coming into this that Josh Giddey was a weak defender. And this goes back to AK. When you're building a team, you have to think about how everything fits together. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that Josh Giddey, if you're going to have him as your point guard, especially you need shooters, you need defenders, and you need a rim protecting big man. You need that. This team is shooting the ball better than expected. You got to give them credit for that. We're one of the worst defensive starting lineups or teams in the league, period. We're giving up the second most points per game in the entire NBA. But then the big man position. While Josh Giddey does help Nikola Vucevic tremendously on the offensive side of the ball, the way that Josh Giddey can find Vooch is amazing. But Vooch isn't necessarily the best type of center to play with Josh Giddey. And that's where the Bulls have to ask themselves in preparing a long-term contract for Josh Giddey, are you willing to invest in what's going to be needed to get the best out of Josh Giddey? That's the question that AK and Eversley have to ask themselves. And that answer so far has been a resounding no. It hasn't. Even getting Jalen Smith, who again, offensively fits exactly what you want in with Josh Giddey. Defensively, it doesn't. And so Josh Giddey is one of those players. And there's a lot of players like this in the NBA. This isn't just against Josh Giddey. That the lineups and who you have him out there with, how you figure out your personnel around that is so dramatically important. And this is the question that the Bulls, and this is the conundrum that the Bulls have put themselves in. Is Josh Giddey the caliber of player that you have on your team that you want to say we have to build so specifically to be able to maximize his pluses while mitigating his negatives? That's what the Bulls have to ask themselves. Whereas you have players like Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu, which were the backcourt last season, that is much more flexible in how you can build out the rest of your team. That's the question that the Bulls have to ask themselves. That is the true Josh Giddey problem. Not just his production on the basketball court, but it's that if you lock him into a long-term deal, you are now locking yourself into having to have a very particular team. And guess what? This front office has been there before. DeMar DeRozan is another player that you have to build your team specifically in a specific way to take advantage of everything that he does well. And this front office failed at that. Now, there were injuries, there were other things involved and things like that. That's why I say I'm not coming at this necessarily coming at the player that Josh Giddey is. I want to take a holistic approach at everything that's going on with this Bulls team. Can this Bulls team afford right now, with where they are, with not having a superstar, to say that we have to build in such this particular way to make sure that we're getting the most out of Josh Giddey? And that's the question that also, how much does Josh Giddey fit with everyone else? That's why the lineups are really important here, right? When you look at Josh Giddey, that positive lineup that Josh Giddey's in has two defenders in it, in Ayo and Patrick Williams. 2+, and I guess we can even say Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine is a plus defender so far this year. So basically, in that lineup, you have Zach, who's playing really good defense. You got Ayo and Patrick Williams, who are two versatile, switchable defenders. And then you got Nikola Vucevic, who is playing better defensively, but he's still a cone, right? But that is the possessions, the lineup that has the most possessions that is also positive. You look at the other positive lineup that that Josh Giddey has been in. Now, this lineup has only played 18 possessions together, but it's Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic. Now, that is not a very sustainable lineup. Zach LaVine playing the 4 is not very sustainable. That lineup has played 18 possessions together, and they have a positive plus minus of plus 91 outscoring it, because that's just an offensive lineup. That lineup is almost perfect with having two ball handlers to get Kobe, Zach LaVine, and Vooch involved. That's a very particular offensive lineup, right? But that lineup is also giving up 142 points per 100 possessions and an 86% effective field goal shooting percentage. It's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. So it comes down to how you build your team. And the problem that we've seen here with this Bulls team in front office in prior years is that you can't really trust AK and Eversley when they have to build a team in a particular way. Now, maybe that changes. But I look at it and I say they have some serious questions that they need to look in the mirror and ask themselves over what exactly they want to get out of this. I just felt like we seen Kobe and Ayo look like a 1-2 punch, and instead of riding with that, we traded AC for him. I just think it was unnecessary and could have gotten a Dennis Schroeder type guy. Hey, I mean, CP, I understand where you're coming from. Gabriel, no problem. It's a team sport. This is a great squad. No, it's not a great squad. Sorry. And again, nobody's blaming it just on Josh Giddey, but it is the player that Josh Giddey is and what it represents. And again, it's also the combination of you got to pay him, right? If Josh Giddey still had 2 years left on a rookie scale deal, it would be more of, all right, bet we got some time to figure this out. But the Bulls have to pay him at the end of the year. That's what makes this an even more pressing problem. Football CF Candy says, serious problem, and the worst part is you could see it with the large sample size. And okay, well, that was very different. No, you couldn't see, and that's unfair. It actually worked more than it didn't work in OKC. And people keep looking back at how the playoffs ended, and people forget that playoff series before then, Josh Giddey shot the 3 ball really well, and they tried to defend him the same way, and that team won that playoff series. The OKC Thunder won that playoff series. And actually, the Thunder were in a really good situation where they were able to maximize Josh Giddey because they had such good defenders. Now, because of their other good defenders being guards, it phased Josh Giddey into a particular role. But I would say this is that the way that they had so many plus defenders on that OKC Thunder team is actually the way you kind of want to build around Giddey. I'm just praying that AK and Mark Eversley make the right decision and don't sign Giddey to a new contract at the end of the season. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you, Winton. That's not a good decision. And it's not good because of a couple of reasons. What we've seen around the NBA is that even if you want to move a guy, you lock him in and then you try to move him. Now, just letting a player that's 22-year-olds walk away, that's never the right decision. Because even if that player goes to another team that fits them better and looks right, you could have tried to move them. Facilitate a sign and trade. Now, if they can do that, great, right? But it's very rare that letting a player of 22 years old just walk away clear cut for nothing that has already done some of the things that Josh Giddey has done, that very rarely ever works out to the right decision. Now, the right decision may be moving him before you get to that point, but it's very rare. And me and you, I know we've disagreed on this a lot. It rarely, now the Bulls are a conundrum because everything that should not work out or that should work out does not work out for the Bulls. That's just the way that this franchise has been, right? The Sun Deep says, I've been saying those bounce thread needle passes ain't it when he's force feeding the paint like 2017 John Wall and Gortat. I mean, listen, he can make those passes. That's it. Like and that's why I shifted the conversation to getting to Josh Giddey has to be in a very particular lineup. He just does. Correction, a well-rounded power forward. I mean, there could have been a lot of different moves, but the problem is that the Bulls, because they did not have a vision, like last year at the trade deadline, you probably could have got a power forward and a first-round pick for Alex Caruso, but you waited into the offseason, and that's where it goes with it again. Billy also needs to put Giddey in the right position to succeed. We know that he's not a great defender, but yesterday he got put on an island. Oh, agree, 100%. And I very much so called that out in the post-game show and in today's early episode that Billy Donovan didn't help Josh Giddey's confidence at all by putting him in that situation. So I did call that out because you're absolutely correct. But the thing is that you could only hide against a team as deep as the Cleveland Cavaliers. You can only hide a player that's as bad defensively as Josh Giddey so much. Now, that's not going to be the same thing that happens against every team because not every team's as deep with scores as what the Cleveland Cavaliers are. But when you do face those teams, it's only so much hiding you can do in those situations. So that's another thing you got to look at. But your statement is 100% correct. Devin, if our defense was good, we would have a winning record. Yeah, I mean, if our defense was at least middle of the pack in the turnovers, absolutely. But unfortunately, we don't have that. The roster that just looks like it's going to all of a sudden hit an uptick defensively. We just don't have that, right? So it's an interesting place. Let's see. Giannis said that he would want to play. No, that's not what he said. See, people constantly misquote this. That's not what Giannis said. Giannis specifically said, I grew up a Michael Jordan fan. I always thought about playing in Chicago, and he literally said, and you may never know what happens in the future. He never said that he wanted to play right now in Chicago. People go back and watch that whole mock interview and don't watch it from the standpoint of wanting to hear the Chicago Bulls. Listen objectively. That's not what he said. Would it be possible to see Giddey plus-minus splits in OKC when SGA was injured last year? I also think that his limitations offensively cannot justify his defensive limitations, and that's a fair conversation to have. The site that I use doesn't break it down that way. You know what? I actually could. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Oh, see, I don't know exactly injured, but I can tell you what his plus-minuses were in lineups without SGA. So, for example, when Josh Giddey was out there with Cason Wallace, Jalen Williams, Aaron Wiggins, he had a positive point differential of plus 2.9 and 121 points per 100 possessions. That lineup also only gave up 118 per 100 possessions, so it was positive. Then you look at, well, that's another Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that's Shai. All right, then you look at Josh Giddey with Lou Dort, Jalen Williams, Aaron Wiggins, and Chet Holmgren. That lineup played a lot of possessions together. They were plus 37.5, and they gave up a points per 100 possession of 107.8, and they scored 145 points per 100 possession. So, I mean, Josh Giddey was still impact, but again, what did they have there? What's the common denominator there? A defensive athletic big in Chet Holmgren. That's the key to Josh Giddey. That is the key of Josh Giddey. If you want to eliminate, and that, you know what that does? If somebody gets by Josh Giddey, if you have an athletic defensive center, that doesn't mean that they can't have an offensive game, but if you have a center that's very athletic on that defensive side of the ball and smart, they're going to catch that rotation, they're going to deter players away from the rim, and they're going to be able to rim protect. So that's the common denominator here. We're seeing with Josh Giddey in positive lineups, a defensive big is important. That's what we're seeing. So it like I said, it's not just about, because again, this team, it would be different if this team was like near championship. They're not, right? So we're not that. But the true conundrum, question, whatever you want to label it, just comes down to this simple thing. You have to make a decision on the contract at the end of the year. If you lock him in to a long-term contract, what are you willing to do to then help Josh Giddey out on the court more? Is it a young big in this draft that's coming up that you think you can get? Right? Is it going out there and being aggressive? Is it getting a Time Lord, which people have brought up, right? Even though he's a very injured player, is it getting somebody like that? That's what they have to ask themselves. Well, football. That's why I said it's not just the defense, but I'm just talking about specifically how athletic he is on the defensive side of the ball, right? But you're absolutely right. Also, he's very versatile offensively as well. But I'm saying specifically the defensive aspect is what helps, because I'll tell you this, even if you can get a defensive center, Josh Giddey can get that player, as long as they can catch lobs, Josh Giddey's going to get them some possessions offensively. Now, if you can get somebody that's as versatile offensively as they are defensively, but I'm just saying the defensive part to help overcome, Josh Giddey can get a big involved in the game of basketball. I have no doubts about that. Josh Giddey's one of the type of point guards that if you have a defensive center that they rebound well, they block shots, and they have really good defensive IQ. As long as they're not an idiot and don't have a handful of left thumbs on the offensive side of the ball, Giddey's going to get them extra buckets. He's going to get them extra buckets. Hey, Winton, I don't, bro. Let me ask you this, Winton. When have the Bulls let a young player walk away for nothing? Even Laurie didn't walk away for nothing. So, I mean, it depends on the market that's out there. Maybe the Bulls do find, and that's why I said it's not necessarily about them signing him to keep him, but I do think that, and maybe that's not what you're saying either. That didn't come out your mouth, so maybe you're not saying letting him walk away for nothing. But yeah. If Giddey continues to play at this level, do you think he'll get a large contract offer from another? Oh, fuck no. I think we could easily match, but if Brooklyn wants to offer him $30 million a year, go with God, I guess. Hey, and that's the Wizards, the Brooklyn Nets. They're going to be a team so interesting to watch on. Do they play spoiler with some of these restricted free agents because they can offer however much money? Gafford would be a huge force, and I wish we never got. Oh man, Gafford would be perfect to play with Josh Giddey. Shirley Gilly was brought to the team for the future, not the current roster. With Vooch and Zach gaining current trade value, we will see sooner than later. Yeah, I mean that's definitely a possibility too, right? No Giddey problem as far as I'm concerned. But that's the thing. That is a problem because it's not. You can't have a player that's just there to set. This is the modern basketball. Unfortunately, setting the table isn't enough in modern basketball to not be a problem. It's just not. Not when it would be different if he was just mid defensively, but not when you're as bad defensively as what Josh Giddey has been. That's just not enough. That's not enough. He's a restricted free agent, in my opinion. You look to get him as low as possible in the short-term deal, maybe match a deal. Without an all-NBA center, his value would be limited. Extremely. Great point. Great point. Lively has surpassed Gafford in Dallas lineup. Have they started Derek Lively now? Listen, I don't know. Remember when Gafford's contract's up. But if the Bulls were to sign Gafford, I wouldn't be mad at it. Let's see. When is his contract up? He got one more year after this season. Walker Kessler's solid rim protection, but I really wouldn't call him a defender. But he's a very smart player. He's very smart. Very smart. But all right, y'all, I just wanted to come. Listen, it was on my spirit. I just wanted to come. I wanted to break it down. I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to see how you guys are feeling about it. Start up the conversation. And let's try to have the conversation of more than just, oh, Giddey sucks. Like, come on. Like, I just, I like to have intelligent conversations, right? And I know a lot of people in the comment section would as well. Like, don't debate. If you're trying to have an actual basketball conversation with them, and they're just like, oh, but he sucks. He sucks. Oh my God, he sucks. Just let him live. Just let him live. Just let him live, man. But all right, y'all, man. I love you guys, man. Make sure you guys are staying in tune with us, man. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. But that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end everything on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red, y'all. Peace.
Presentation of the Break Media.